If you've ever under-anticipated recoil, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, guys. Like and comment. Get in there with a comment about how you underestimated recoil. Mine was on the M1 carbine when it was full auto. Thought that would be much easier. It definitely was not. If you're looking to support the channel, the biggest support of the channel right now is Big Daddy Unlimited. Big Daddy Unlimited is like the Costco of the gun world, 99 cents for the first month. After that, price goes up. Is it worth it? Well, if you buy products, yes. If not, no. We, of course, want to thank our sponsor for this particular video, which is Simply Safe. A big thank you to Simply Safe. They've supported us over the years. Great company. We'll talk about them more later. Big shout out as well to Grizzly Targets for supplying the targets for my range. Didn't really know a whole lot about them prior to getting those targets, but they are absolutely awesome. Can't recommend them enough. Definitely go and give Grizzly Targets a little look-see. GT10 for the discount code. Ladies, gentlemen, and my often forgotten but not by me, Glock 17s, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about a very cool firearm, and that is going to be the Archon Firearms Type B. Now, before we get into the Type B, let's do our full disclosure like we always do. So, full disclosure, what is my relationship with Archon? Beyond the firearm and the ammunition provided, none. So, the ammunition and the firearm were provided to me over a year ago by Archon in order to do the review. 3,000 rounds from them, and another 3,000 from LEX Ammunition. Big thank you to them, discount code Garand, for a total of 6,000 rounds. No other money was exchanged. This is a pretty standard thing when it comes to how my reviews are run, which is the firearm plus a couple thousand rounds of ammunition. So no funny business there. And despite all that, I always will give a review that is as honest as I possibly can be. I've had some very nice firearms that I have absolutely destroyed because they're not good. So don't worry, I will be as unbiased as possible. And with those things in mind, let's get into this firearm here. So to start off with, a lot of people open up their review on the Type B by comparing it to the Glock 19. Well, here I have it with a Glock 17, and as you can see, they are roughly the same size. So I believe that a 17 is a much better kind of guide of what it should be compared against, and because of that, my conclusions may be a little bit different from what you see from other reviewers. So in any case, the Glock 17 will be the comparison piece to which we compare it to the Type B. Now, if you're not familiar with the Type B, that is okay. It's a very innovative weapon that I don't think gets enough enough attention, but in any case, it is a striker-fired handgun. And it uses a very interesting technology called AF Speed Lock. Sounds kind of gimmicky, but essentially what it does is a little bit of history here. So almost every pistol out there uses a variation or just some type of action that's already been used. Most typically, it's the Browning tilt barrel. This is very common. Now, because of that design, you have to have a certain amount of height in your weapons. Because of that, you don't see a whole lot of weapons that get too low in the hand. The Glock 17 is perhaps one of the best in my opinion because it does sit so low in the hand. It's for that reason that a lot of people tend to use it. Because if we take a look at like a SIG P320, the barrel sits higher than the Glock and especially sits higher than the Type B. So what happens is every time you fire that SIG with its barrel much higher, physics and science and shit comes into play and you're gonna get a lot more muzzle flip just because of where the slide is cycling and where that energy is coming from the muzzle. The lower you get the barrel in your hand, the easier a weapon is to control. Now, the most extreme example being the brand new Luego Arms Alien, which is incredibly low. However, I have not had time to shoot that particular handgun. But for most people, and up until fairly recently, the Glock 19, 17, whatever, has been one of the best because of how low the barrel sits in your hand. Because of that, those follow-up shots, that recoil is very, very pleasant. Now, enter the Archon Firearms Type B with an even lower barrel. So that's the first thing I want to talk about as we go tip to butt like the Navy likes. The barrel sits so low on the Archon Firearms Type B. It's kind of hard to show on camera, but it is just a little bit lower than the Glock, which is pretty incredible. getting that low into your hand makes for, and I'm getting ahead of myself here on the review, but screw it, whatever. It allows you to really control that gun because, from the 320, the SIG P320 down to the Glock 17, you have a little bit of height difference, but it's, if you didn't know firearms, you wouldn't think it would make that much of a difference. But the reality of the matter is that the 320 has a lot more muzzle flip than the Glock 17. So from the 320 to the Glock 17, you have a much more controllable firearm, and from the 17 to the Archon Type B, you have an even more controllable firearm. So much so that there have been multiple instances where when I'm shooting this, I've been easily able to track the sights through the entirety of the recoil cycle, pretty much keeping them in line with each other. And that's pretty incredible. You can do that with dots, and we'll talk more about that later, but it is a very, very flat recoil. It's not often that I'm impressed by pistols, but I was very impressed by the Type B when I shot it. Now, before we get too ahead of ourselves, the barrel is very, very accurate. It's very easy to put the same round through the same hole, no problem, long as you are practicing your fundamentals, which isn't that difficult with the Archon Firearms Type B. Now, beyond that, I've shot this at 50, 60, 80, all the way out to 120. As long as you are doing your part, this weapon will absolutely make impacts on steel or whatever you're trying to shoot. It is a very, very accurate handgun. And that is one thing that I can definitely say about that. But beyond that as well, is with that AF speed lock technology, that barrel sits so low. And so with these newer technologies, I never really expect them to be that robust, because one thing that has made the Glock so great is it both has low recoil and it is a very, very reliable handgun. Everything that I've seen from the Type B is pointing to the fact that this as well will be maybe just as reliable handgun. I don't know if you've seen it before, but I would definitely recommend taking a look at Military Arms channel. He did a review on the Type B where he put it through the gauntlets test. Essentially, it's going from water to sand to dirt to mud, and it's just, most weapons fail. But the Archon Firearms Type B, out of every firearm that he's ever done, perhaps did not the best, because it did have a couple hiccups at the very end. To be clear, most guns just absolutely fail and don't finish the test, but it did incredibly well. When I saw that test, I was very surprised. And now that I've been shooting this gun, I'm even more surprised at how well this gun is held together, because due to a series of unfortunate events, I did end up throwing this gun at a rock as hard as I could, and it absolutely had no problems. I've covered this in dust, mud, water. Throughout all those conditions, I've never had this weapon malfunction on me, which is very surprising. So they've both made a newer design that sits low in the hand, and at the same time, they've given it just absurd reliability. So I have been very, very impressed. Now, it'd be remiss to note that some people have noted that they've had some problems with their Archon Type Bs. I believe those were the older, all German-made guns. These are the Hungarian and German-made guns, and as Military Arms Channel so eloquently put it, is the Hung German model. But in any case, it seems to be that these newer firearms don't have any issues. Certainly mine has not. But I will acknowledge that other people have had issues with their particular guns with light primer strikes. I've never had those issues. I fired a variety of brass and steel case ammunition with no problems. Everything points to the fact that this gun is just a very reliable weapon. So I've been very impressed with that. So we have a weapon that is both flat shooting and very reliable. How does everything else stack up? Well, my first nitpicking thing on the handgun is the optic. It needs to have an optic. Modern handguns should have an optic. An optic is a superior choice for a weapon compared to iron sights, and this will be remedied. Archon will be coming out with models that do have red dots on them. My particular one did not. That was my biggest complaint. That being said, the iron sights are a great idea, and here's the reason why. What they supply with it, awesome. The fiber optic model, great. The night sights model is great, but they use Glock dovetails. That makes your choice of iron sights so much easier because you can already go off a large base of parts that is already out there. So that was a great choice from Archon Firearms to do that. With that being said, let's talk a little bit about the slide here. So the slide incorporates many modern features that we see on a lot of newer kind of combat handguns, which is front slide serrations and those types of things. So we have front slide serrations, but beyond that, we also have a little scoop at the top there. You guys see that right there? And what that's for is when you're doing press checks to allow you to more easily get into it. Are press checks worth it? I think so. Some people freak out about them. In any case, it's cool that you can do it. And if you don't do it, then you at least have a little bit of weight savings right there. So don't freak out about that. From there, we have, of course, our rear slide serrations to manipulate the weapon and all that type of stuff. Everything looks good there. We do have a flared ejection port right there to ensure that your brass is going to clear. Everything I've seen from the extractor has been good. Again, I've had no trouble with function and reliability of this particular weapon. Beyond that as well, we have the accessory rail. This is another thing I'm going to nitpick with on the Type B. So the accessory rail allows the mounting of weapon lights and all that type of stuff for all your LARPing needs. Now, pretty much every weapon light goes off a form factor of a Surefire, and pretty much every other light company goes off of that form factor so that everything will fit right up and snug up against your trigger guard. So you can see here the controls on the Surefire are right in front of the trigger guard. That allows me to manipulate it with my offhand or in any method that you tend to do, whether you do it with your trigger finger to put it constant on or you momentary it with your thumb or however you do it. Point is, it's right there. The problem with the Archon Type B is their pick mounting isn't quite at the distance it should be from the front of the trigger guard. Because of that, it doesn't quite mate up correctly with that. So what happens is the switches for it are just a little bit forward of where they should be. So it's kind of annoying. So can I still reach them? Yeah, absolutely. But I wish they were a little bit further back and that the Picatinny mounting was just a tad bit back. That would solve a lot of problems and allow for this to mate up more correctly with the front of the trigger guard. Just kind of odd, given that pretty much every gun kind of follows that form factor, but that's me nitpicking. Getting into the slide right here, the slide is very interesting, so we'll talk about it here for a little bit. So first thing is that, for some people, a Glock just doesn't feel very good to them. I'm used to it, so the Glock feels good to me. I like how they feel. But that being said, the Archon Type B feels a lot more natural and a lot more natural to point compared to the Glock. The angle is just about as severe as a Glock. And the reason for that is it allows you to kind of drive into the gun and kind of get more biomechanical shit behind the gun. You could really control it. But the problem being is that's kind of awkward for people. But the way they kind of contoured the back of it, it really does feel pretty good. And beyond that, it's the correct size. So for some people, they don't like the size of the Glock grip, but the Archon Type B feels great for my medium-sized man hands and for most other people who have fired this particular weapon. Beyond that, we have these little scoops right here that allow your finger to rest right where they should. And beyond that, the biggest thing that was very interesting to me was that we have our tang right here, so you can get your hand really high up on that and also not get that slide bite that you typically get from the Glock, where a lot of people, where they're getting their web of their hand chewed up. So the tang protects you, it still allows you to get very high up there. But beyond that, the very back here, you can kind of see it. I'll kind of rotate the gun so you can see it. As you can see right there, there's a little protrusion right there. What that does is it pushes into the web of your hand right here. And what it causes is it causes your hand to pinch around the gun. It's kind of hard to see, but what happens is it naturally makes your hand pinch around it. So the first time I did it, I was like, what is this doing to my body? But it feels good, and it actually ended up working very well. And it kind of just naturally helps you grip that gun and for everything just kind of feel a little bit more natural. Beyond that, the weirdest thing about this is the texturing. So when I first saw this gun, I assumed that these were just squares and that they were all uniform, but they are not. In fact, they are angled at such a way to resist recoil in the direction that they need to. So compared to stippling, which is just kind of a rough texture that you're able to grab onto overall, this is very scientific in the way that it resists recoil in your hand. It's very bizarre. I can't believe that somebody spent this much time putting this all together. But in any case, at the very front portion right here, these squares are actually angled up and out. So what happens is as the gun is trying to recoil up, they dig into your hand and keep it from doing that. At the back right here, they're reversed the opposite way because the gun is going to be pressing down on your hand like that. So they resist movement that direction. So those two work together. On the sides, they're angled this direction so that as the gun's trying to go back, it's pressing forward into the gun to keep that gun from slipping off your hand during a recoil. So although it seems very counterintuitive the way everything is designed, it actually, when you fire it, it feels correct. Now, is it better overall than stippling? That's harder to say, because stippling feels very good in the hand too, but so does this. But the biggest thing that I can say for it is that over a day of shooting in a class, a couple thousand rounds, this doesn't rub my hand raw. And sometimes, not on this particular one, this is a good stipple job, but sometimes it can be so rough that it will rub your hand raw throughout the firing cycle, and that kind of sucks. And this isn't that way, so it definitely feels good in my opinion. Now, as far as the controls are concerned, they're well placed. The magazine release is simple, easy to actuate. I have no complaints about it. The slide stop, slide release, whatever you want to call it, but nobody really cares, is really cool. It kind of follows along with what the Cogworks extended slide release does. What the Cogworks extended slide release does is it puts your typical slide release a little bit higher. And the reason for that is that when you grip a Glock, a lot of people end up pressing down on that slide release so that when they fire, they don't get that gun locking back when it hits the last round. That can be kind of annoying. Archon did much the same thing, where they raised it just a little bit to get it out of the way of your firing hand while you're firing. Because of that, I've always had this gun lock open when on the last round, so it's always worked for me. Again, it's these small details that make a pistol what it should be. So I like that they did those small touches that just made this from a good firearm into a much better firearm. Now, as you know, this video is sponsored by Simply Safe. So why I like Simply Safe so much is that compared to many other companies out there, with Simply Safe, you can add piecemeal what you need and when you need it. So here's what I mean. With a traditional company, you have to buy everything all at once and then you have it and you can add to it, but not very easily. With Simply Safe, I can add what I need as I need it. So for example, if I end up, buying more than one gun or something, I keep the majority of those firearms in one room, I can add additional layers of security to that room. So I can have door open sensors, I can have window break sensors, I can have things that can sense water, all that kind of stuff to let me know what's going on. I can have security cameras up, which gives me peace of mind, and that all links into my phone so I can see what's happening in real time. So I very much so like Simply Safe. It's a fairly low price to get started. Can't say enough good things about Simply Safe. It's everything that you want in a security system for our 2A advocates out there. Get out there, check out Simply Safe. Can't recommend them enough. Now, my biggest complaint about the Archon Type B comes down to the magazine and the magazine well. For a gun the size of a Glock 17, for all intents and purposes, it should have a 17-round magazine like the Glock 17. However, it has a 15-round magazine. So I humbly request that Archon Firearms extend that butt a little and make this mag a little bit bigger and have a 17 or an 18-round magazine and just give me more capacity. A lot of people have noted, why do you need 2 more rounds? Is it that much of a difference? Well, 2 rounds can make a difference. In any case, I want more ammo. So it should be a 17-rounder. And my other complaint with the magazine comes down to the lips on either side right there. They're 2 big old lips. So if you compare that to the Glock 17, they have smaller lips. And the reason that this matters on the base plate is because when this is sitting on my belt and a sling comes and catches this all the time, it almost always scoops and throws this to Mars or something like that. So I wish that the base plate would be a little bit smaller and a little bit more of a form factor similar to a Glock, because that would ensure that it wasn't getting just launched off my kit all the time, because that has definitely happened to me multiple times. My other problem is the stylized kind of grooves that they have on the side of the butt of the gun where you're inserting it. It is pretty generous for a magazine insert, but those little grooves kind of create kind of an odd kind of magazine reload at times. So I think it could be a little bit better. Honestly, just making it overall the same, like Glock, would just be better. And I don't want everything to be a Glock, but Glock has done some very good things. Now, I've avoided it for long enough. Let's talk about the trigger. So go ahead and put your finger right over mine. We're gonna ghost that trigger together. First off, we have a lot of mush here. So we have a solid 3 millimeters of mush before we hit into the trigger, the first wall. That wall travels about 1 millimeter. And we have our let off. That let off is perhaps maybe 2 pounds, maybe a little bit less. Okay, let's feel that reset. 1mm, very positive, and we have a reset. From there, you're past that wall already. It's a 1mm, 2-pound trigger. So this is really ridiculously nice of a trigger, because what happens is when you want to fire that first shot, you got to be deliberate with it. But once that first shot goes off, this weapon starts cycling, keeping that gun firing is no effort at all, because you have that 1mm reset with that 2-pound trigger. This gun is ridiculously fast. We have that 2-pound 1mm reset trigger. We have a slide that squats as low as a Navy guy. That's all the way to the ground, just in case you didn't know. And just a gun that just doesn't recoil. It's very, very seldom that I'm impressed by a firearm. I'm usually fairly underwhelmed. The SIG P320, the M17, many other handguns have pretty much disappointed me. And they can be good and they can be reliable, but it's very seldom that I've run into a weapon that I truly love. I really, really like the Archon Firearms Type B. I think there are a couple things that they need to do better, like the accessory rail and the magazines, but overall, I think this is an incredible firearm. I don't know why it's been overlooked so widely. Perhaps it was those teething issues that it first had, but I really do truly believe that this weapon will begin to take off and that it will become more popular, because it is just so nice, and it really isn't that much more expensive than your typical Glock. They start out at around 800 or so. And of course, you can get weird coatings and get into the thousands and that type of thing, but 800 for a base gun, I think that is a really, really good deal. I think I can definitely justify it over the cost of a Glock. Many Glocks are going around for 600, of course. If you're LE and that type of thing, then it's, Glock's only like $399. But if you're not LE or mil, then the Archon Type B is definitely worth it. Even if you are, I think that the Type B has such a better trigger, such a better recoil impulse, that I truly do believe that this is an excellent, excellent buy. So what do we have? We have a weapon that is accurate, reliable, and has just the most horrifically low recoil I've ever seen of any pistol that I've shot to date. It is so easy to track the sights through your entirety of your shot, to keep this on target. It's so easy to run bill drills. I've been running 182, 172 bill drills with this gun because it is just so easy to keep this gun on target through rapid fire. It's awesome. It's incredible. When it comes to a pistol though, what are your holster options? So right now, the biggest one is through Standard Co. That's what holster I was using right here. So this was for a Type B with an X300. Fits fine. I've also been concealed carrying this as well with a Standard Co. holster as well. So again, that is a great option for holsters right there for the Type B. Now, the problem is that Safariland doesn't currently make a holster for the Type B. Hopefully that is remedied in the very near future, because this is absolutely a weapon that I think needs to take off a little bit more. So Safariland, please make a holster for this gun. It definitely deserves it. This is a very cool firearm. I definitely recommend this. So get out there, try it out. If you don't like it, whatever. Get a Glock, get a CZ, get something, but I honestly don't believe that you can go wrong with the Archon Firearms Type B. But here's the thing, as quick as this gun is, as easy as it is to shoot, if you don't have training, none of it's gonna matter. So get training, guys. Tons of great places to get training from. Bear Solutions, Cogworks, great dude. Haley Strategic, maybe my dad, maybe not, we're not sure here. SlyTac Training, tons of great guys out there. Get that training, become the weapon. Your mind is the most important thing you will ever invest in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I've got nothing else for you. Final thing for you guys, as crazy as the world has gotten, I'm gonna make my plea that I always do, which is going to be to listen. Listening is so important right now. Just like you would want to be listened to on topics that you understand, so would other people like to be listened to on topics that they understand. Please take the time to listen, to be civil, and to have good discourse. Screaming, shouting at each other does not solve anything. It's important to remember that as crazy as everything has gotten, and as much as the left has vilified the right and the right has vilified the left, that we are all still citizens of one of the greatest countries who have ever graced the face of this planet. Remember to be civil, remember to listen, and remember to show a little bit of kindness. You never know what somebody's going through. A lot of craziness out there. Be the better person, because I know somebody out there is going to be like, well, fuck them. They started it. I don't care. Be the better person. Be the better man. Be the better woman. Be better. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching again. You know, if you guys have gotten this far, Survival Dispatch. Survival Dispatch is a site to check out survival information, subscription-based. Can't recommend it enough. Definitely get in there, check it out. My final shout out to my Patreon people. Love you guys so much. Take care. You guys have done so much for this channel. Love you guys. Be safe out there.